This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
So the Cleveland Browns beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that took a draft picture that was once very simple for Cleveland. If you lose out, you would get a top 2 pick, to a picture that is now suddenly very, very complicated. Now, complicated does not mean bad necessarily. I think a lot of people associate complication with bad in this kind of a context. But it's important to make that distinction, right? It is possible that by some miracle, the Cleveland Browns can end up still with the number 2 pick in the draft by the end of next week's football games, right? Like, that is entirely possible. It would take one thing happening that I think is very unlikely, which is the Jacksonville Jaguars losing to the Tennessee Titans in the final week of the season in a game where the Jacksonville Jaguars absolutely need to win. But I'm going to be honest with you, stranger things have happened in the final week of the NFL season. So I wanted to make this video, a video that's focused on the draft order, that's focused on what could happen on Sunday and what that means for the Browns' long-term picture, because I've seen a lot of people panicking from this perspective, freaking out, already doom scrolling and all that nonsense, pregame and a lot of sadness. And I find it to be a bit premature. And even if it isn't, where the Browns get the number 2 pick in the draft, I still don't think it's a reason to be as depressed about it as some people have chosen to be on the internet. We're going to break it down. We're going to talk about what the draft order could be, how things could break the Browns' way or break in the opposite way for the Cleveland Browns. Again, they have a outcome range on Sunday of 2 to 7. They could end the night with the 7th overall pick with a win over the Cincinnati Bengals. They can end the night with a number 2 overall selection if everything goes the way that the Browns would like it and they lose to the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll go over all of those scenarios in just a minute, but y'all, first, take a second to hear from our sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. Now, when we're looking at Week 18 results, the big elephant in the room is who's going to be playing their starters and who's not going to be playing their starters. Because of how the NFL structures Week 18, where you're having all divisional opponents at the end of the season, you're going to have multiple situations where teams at the bottom of the draft order are playing teams that are getting prepared to play in the playoffs, which means you're getting teams that are playing against teams without starters, right? So let's go through all the games on Sunday real quick and discuss which ones will matter to the draft orders, which ones will not matter to the draft order, and who's likely to play their starters and who's not likely to play their starters. So let's pull this up right now, right? So we got the game slate of this week's football action. So this result here between the Raiders and Kansas City, as far as the Browns are considered, is pretty functionally useless. Now, it does determine, like, if the Raiders win, right, and everybody else loses, it does take the Raiders out of the number one overall spot. So let's say the Raiders win and the Giants lose, then the Giants then get the number one overall selection. But since the Raiders are coming into this weekend with only 2 wins on their record, and the Browns are coming in with 4, that means that there is no way that the Browns are going to end up ahead of the Raiders in the draft order. It's just impossible. The Raiders will be ahead of the Cleveland Browns in any draft order that is dropped here, right? So whether the Raiders win or lose, it's maybe a conversation for opening up the number one overall pick for maybe a trade. And if that's what you're interested in, then you want the Raiders to win. But if you don't care about trading up to number one and you just want the earliest pick possible, then, you know, the Raiders winning or losing does not really affect you either way. All right. Then we have the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Broncos. This one does not affect you at all. It could be a tie. It doesn't matter. The Colts versus the Texans. Now, this one was interesting because it had the potential to affect the Cleveland Browns, but likely won't affect the Cleveland Browns for one simple reason. This game and the game it could affect, which is the Titans and Jaguars game, happen at the same time, right? If this game were happening Saturday or earlier, you know, then if the Texans lost this game, then all of a sudden the Jaguars have no reason to play their starters. But since both of these games are happening Sunday at 1:00, then it all of a sudden means that it doesn't matter for the Jaguars. They have to assume that the Texans are going to win this game, and they have to play this game versus the Texans as if it were a playoff game if they want to win the division. Now, the Jaguars might decide that they don't care about winning the division. I'd be very shocked if that were the case, but they could decide that they don't care about winning the division and they rest their starters anyway. But again, seriously doubt there would be a little bit easier of a chance for Tennessee to win that game versus Jacksonville if Jacksonville's not playing their starters. But I would be shocked if Jacksonville does not play their starters, right? Another game, let's go down. Obviously, Cleveland versus the Bengals. That matters. If Cleveland wins, they will lock themselves into probably the 7th pick of the draft, right? If we go into this draft order and I take away that tie, the Browns are entering the week as a 4-win team, one of 2 4-win teams. There currently aren't any 5-win football teams. So if the Browns win a game here, they will be a 5-win football team. The Bengals cannot jump them because the Bengals have 6 wins. The Saints, same deal here, right? And maybe like if the Commanders win, then the Browns would jump them to 6. But the worst possible draft spot for the Cleveland Browns is 7th. The best possible spot for the Browns is number 2. And again, I'll show you how the Browns could get there. So let's go through the games in the AFC, pick winners for games that aren't going to affect the draft order to Cleveland Browns. Let's say the Chargers versus the Denver Broncos. Let's pick the Chargers here. Let's go with the Texans here. And let's go with the Patriots here, the Ravens here. On the NFC side, that's going to affect draft positioning, but let's go with the 49ers here. This one not really going to affect much, but let's just go with Minnesota here. Let's give Detroit a win here, or let's just give it to Chicago. See there, this one again, not really going to affect draft order since the Saints have 6 wins, so they could lose that one. That one is going to have an effect on draft order. This Commanders game could have an effect on draft order, depending on who has the strength of schedule advantage, because right now it looks like the Commanders might be edging out the Browns in strength of schedule, if that number is correct. Let me pull up the Tankathon to see. No, the Browns still have the strength of schedule advantage here. It's just not updated on this one. So even this one, very minimal effect on what could happen, but it looks like the Eagles are going to rest their starters, but the Washington is starting like Josh Johnson at quarterback. And in this game here, let's pick the Panthers, the battle of Baker Mayfield teams. You can pick whichever one you like. All right. So that's kind of some of the other games around the league. And then let's kind of pick out here. So let's go through the scenario where the Browns end up picking number 2 in the draft. Now, again, it doesn't matter who wins this game here for the Browns to pick number 2. It does matter that the Bengals win this game. And then you get to the Jets versus Buffalo. Now, it was an important result for the Buffalo Bills to lose to the Philadelphia Eagles last week, because that put Buffalo in a situation where there's not much to play for. So if Buffalo doesn't play their starters, you can see a scenario where maybe the Jets pull out a narrow victory against the backups of the Buffalo Bills. I still think the Bills will be favored even though they're playing their backups. But let's say the Jets win that game and help out the Browns. Let's say by some miracle the Titans beat the Jaguars. And then this game here, right, the Arizona Cardinals versus the LA Rams. Now, it is interesting. Sean McVay just went up to the podium post-game on Monday Night Football and said he does plan to play his starters this weekend. That happens, it's going to make it really difficult for the Cardinals to beat the Rams, but we'll see how many starters he plays and how much he plays his starters. Sean McVay is kind of an interesting case because he be lying sometimes. All right, but let's say Arizona wins, and then let's say the Giants win, and just for good measure, let's say the Commanders win. If that all happens, then the Browns at 4 wins end up with the number 2 overall pick. Do I think that this scenario is likely? No. The main reason I don't think it's likely is this little result right here, right? The Jaguars need to win this game to secure the division. Now, again, we just watched the Pittsburgh Steelers in a game where they needed to win against the Browns, fumble against the Browns to beat them. And to be fair to the Tennessee Titans and to Cam Ward, they've been playing their better football over the last couple of weeks, especially the last month. So they're not necessarily a terrible team right now. But when you consider how Jacksonville has been playing all year and how Tennessee has been playing all year, this result just seems far-fetched, right? I think we're living with a top 2 that will likely be including the Titans and the Raiders in front of you. Now, a result I do think you could possibly get is the Raiders could win this game and maybe, see the Raiders and Titans are kind of like, even if they both end up with 3 wins, the Raiders still end up with the number 1 overall pick here. But I do think you can end up with a result like this where the Jets beat the Bills because the Bills aren't playing their starters. The Cardinals beat whatever the Rams throw out there. Again, the Rams barely beat a bad Falcons team today on Monday Night Football. I seriously would doubt that they're going to play 4 quarters of starters, even though Sean McVay has indicated that he will play some starters in that game. I don't think he's going to play them the whole goal. And if you look at Sean McVay's history in Week 18, he usually tends to, if he doesn't have to, avoid it. And that's really the main 2 things, right? And this Dallas and New York game, right? Which is another tricky one because I could see New York losing that game and pushing the Browns to number 4 overall. Now, if New York does lose that game to the Dallas Cowboys, and you probably want, if you're a Browns fan, for the Raiders to then win this game versus the Kansas City Chiefs to move them to the number 1 spot, push the Raiders to number 2, and then you're dealing with the Titans in front of you. And the Browns are sitting at 4. One, it makes it possible because you're the second team that would be looking for a quarterback that you can get a quarterback that way. it also makes it possible that you could trade up to number 1. So that's a way that you could look at it that could favor the Cleveland Browns. I tend to look at it simple. I think if you're the Browns, you just want to be sitting in the top 5, right? I think there's a lot of complicated ways to go about it, but I think that's the most simplified way to look at this weekend. You want to sit in the top 5, and you probably want the Jets to win this weekend. If the Jets win, then it just makes things more complicated for them. And we got to have a larger conversation about the Jets, because I don't really agree with how people are using the Jets as this draft boogeyman. I think that there's a lot of other things to consider with how the Jets may or may not want to move going forward. But yeah, if you're the Browns, you want to end up in the top 5. If you're in the top 5, you're within punching range of being able to get the pick you want. If you win this game and you're sitting at like 6 or 7, it's going to be real hard to get what you want. If you want to get a prospect at a fall in that top 2 range. But if you're sitting at 3, I think you're well within range, especially if like a team like the Jets are sitting at 5. So that's kind of how the draft order plays itself out. Now let's have a conversation about some of these teams at the top of the draft and who's a threat to do what. So let's talk about the New York Jets, right? Because I think they have become kind of a convenient draft boogeyman for people who want to shout down the possibility of even getting a quarterback. Like it's not used like logically. You'll just be talking about the draft and be like, well, you might be able to trade up, make a move. And then somebody jumps into your conversation and they're like, oh, the Jets could throw 4 first-round picks. And I don't think the Jets are going to operate like that. Like, one, I think the Jets value every first-round pick that they picked up in those trades, and they probably aren't going to just throw them around like they're candy, right? Like, just because they got it don't mean they're going to waste it, right? Like, just because somebody rich don't mean they just going to make it rain on you for no damn reason. In the way that people talk about the Jets are like that, like, oh, the Jets are just going to make it rain draft picks, when the market doesn't necessarily make it so that they would even have to. So yeah, I don't think the Jets are going to be used that way. I also think people are discounting the possibility that the New York Jets would be interested in a veteran quarterback or more proven quarterback solution that could be made available, right? Like, we've heard rumors about Kyler Murray's availability. That's something the Jets could certainly be interested in. We've heard about Tua's availability, maybe that at a lower cost. A reclamation project is something that Aaron Glenn's interested in, given that Aaron Glenn was part of the crew that oversaw the reclamation of Jared Goff, right? There might be something like that, right? Maybe Matt Stafford has contract issues with the Rams again and becomes available. I think the Jets are going to look at all kind of options to solve their quarterback problem, much like a team like the Cleveland Browns will. So, there's this assumption out there that the Jets are just going to money whip whoever's in the top 2 into trading there. And that assumption is not just amongst Browns fans, right? It's also amongst like Titans fans who are hopeful that they can get like this amazing draft package. It kind of reminds me of last year where people were like, we could get 3 first-round picks for the number 2 pick. And it's like, we ended up getting like an extra first, and it was nice to get an extra first and a second. But the idea is you're going to get like 3 first-round picks, or you're going to have to trade 3 first-round picks if the Browns are in the top 5. It's probably not realistic. What's probably going to happen if the Browns want to trade up is they can choose between whether they want to give up the Jacksonville pick or their 2nd round selection, and then probably a 4th or 5th round selection, depending on which pick they give up to pair with that. I think that's probably going to be the cost of a trade up within the top 5. And I don't know how many teams are going to be willing to pay that price, right? Again, somebody's got to do something with Kyler Murray, whether it be the Cardinals, whether it be a team that's drafting in the top 5, or a team like Pittsburgh, right? Somebody's going to spend picks to get Kyler Murray, or somebody who needs a quarterback, and the Cardinals are going to just keep Kyler Murray and recommit to Kyler Murray, right? There are going to be guys on the move that you don't expect to be on the move, and there's going to be money committed to quarterbacks that you did not see coming. So the landscape is far from being set. What we'll know by the end of Saturday is what the draft order is, and that will give you a good idea of what kind of hand the Browns are dealt to begin this process in the offseason. But a lot of things are going to change stuff, right? Free agency, trades, that's going to change a great deal of who's looking for a quarterback, who's not looking for a quarterback. We went through this last year where people thought there would be a million suitors for the number 2 pick to take a quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, and the Browns are going to trade back and get 3 first-round picks. Browns did end up trading back, but it was because somebody wanted Travis Hunter, and the Browns didn't get 3 first-round picks for number 2. So it's always easy to overestimate how much a trade up is going to cost or trade back is going to get you. And the same could be said for if the Browns end up at 4 or 5, what would a trade back get them? It's probably not going to be that much, if I'm being honest with you, right? Like, we'll see what happens, but I don't think that the demand to get back into the top 5 for anybody looking for a quarterback, I'm questionable whether the demand is even going to be there for quarterback this year, just because so many teams have recently allocated a lot of money towards the position in the last couple of off seasons. You got 6 teams that drafted quarterbacks in 2024. Last year, 2 first-round quarterbacks. You got guys that were traded, different things. Like, so many teams have committed to money to quarterback recently that it makes it hard for me to see a giant market emerge for a trade up within the top 5. And I think that same kind of math makes it difficult for me to think that there's going to be a big trade back market for anybody in the top 5. So we'll see what happens. This is the first step in a larger process. But we'll see what happens, how this plays out. I'm interested to see how it plays out. But y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. That is what the vibe of things are. Peace.